a look back at our top stories of the week. On Thursday, President Joe Biden said order must prevail after college students across the country erupted in protest over the Israel-Hamas war. Activists at Tulane and Loyola were among those nationwide calling on their universities to sever ties with Israel. Those protests eventually led to police action here in New Orleans. Police arrested 20 people at Tulane. Here is some of our coverage of those demonstrations. Whitney, just about 10 minutes or so ago, the last of those cop cars did leave the scene. We also saw dump trucks that were picking up the different tents and things that demonstrators had brought to Jackson Square as well. So right now it's quiet here in the French Quarter, but that was certainly not the case when we first arrived. We got here just before 7, and NOPD was telling us at the time the gates of Jackson Square close every night at 7. If these people aren't out, they're going to need to leave. Now at that time, around 24 demonstrators were inside the gates with tents set up that were refusing to leave. Things were peaceful until demonstrators began to cover the spikes of the fence at Jackson Square with pool noodles, attempting to allow more demonstrators over the gates and into the park. NOPD began yelling, saying that it was trespassing, and officers confiscated those pool noodles. There were also some letters left in the park from a proposal that happened earlier in the evening. As you can see from the video, police tried to take those as well. That's when things between NOPD and the demonstrators escalated. We saw at least 8 demonstrators arrested inside and outside the park. We spoke to a Palestinian man who works in the quarter and witnessed tonight's events.
I saw some protesters pulling on a lot of the French Market doors, and I saw a few of them initiate violence. And coming from a Palestinian who has family in the West Bank and Gaza, who have been kind of like enslaved in a way and treated very unfairly, I am just as angry, but I believe in other ways of protesting.
And again, Whitney, by about 8:30 tonight, demonstrators had either left this scene or were arrested. Orleans Parish Sheriff's Department as well as LSP coming to assist NOPD in blocking off the square for several hours. But again, right now things are quiet. Now, we did reach out to the NOPD for more details on exactly how many people were arrested and what they will be booked for. We are still waiting to hear back from them. I did just get off the phone with an organizer who has organized several different peaceful events for Palestine over the last few months around the New Orleans area. She tells me that they were not involved in tonight's events. Reporting live in the French Quarter, Lily Cummings, WWL Louisiana. The chaotic scene on St. Charles Avenue right now. As you can see, NOPD, mounted police, as well as Tulane PD, LUPD are arresting students and demonstrators who are out here right now. We have photojournalist Rick Niesriggins showing you all the wall of students. They have locked arms along St. Charles Avenue, starting to push in further and further on Tulane's campus. So basically, guys, what they did today was they started a rally on Ferret Street. We showed you that live at 5. Then they walked from Ferret down to St. Charles, blocking off traffic. So all traffic was halted riverbound for quite some time. At this point, it looks like traffic is again flowing, but as you can see, these students, these demonstrators are not letting up. We have a large police presence here now, and we've seen several students get arrested at this point on the ground in cuffs. We also have seen cars, as that traffic was blocked, try and get around these demonstrators, jumping the neutral ground at some points. Watch out, Rick Nies. Don't want to get you hit by a horse there. We have seen cars jump the neutral ground, trying to get around these protesters. And go ahead.
You guys be careful out there. But tell me this. We saw the one protester and a police officer seem like they were sort of in a tug of war over some property there. Were they trying to set up a tent city outside as we've seen in demonstrations across the country?
Yes, Charisse, that was exactly what happened. So these students, these demonstrators walked down to St. Charles. As soon as they made it in front of Tulane University, the main entrance on St. Charles, they started to set up tents, and that's when things escalated. Officers started trying to obtain that property, and that's when you saw that tug of war happening between students and between officers. And then from there, things just kind of escalated. Again, we saw several arrests happening. We've also seen, as I was saying, cars that tried to jump the neutral ground and hit these protesters with their car. NOPD stopped them and said, license and registration, please. Again, you can hear these loud cheers. Honestly, estimating how many students exactly are out here is hard to say, but I'd say between 100, 200 at this point. Definitely dozens. We spoke to students at UNO earlier today who were holding a peaceful demonstration. They said that they would be joining in, some of them, to this rally that you're seeing in front of us now. So it's easy to say that students from across the New Orleans metro are on Tulane's property right now, a part of this large crowd that you're seeing.
Now, Lily, we did see some arrests, obviously, in Jackson Square overnight as well. These protests look very different from what we have seen in the past. Tempers escalating. This is a pretty tense situation out where you are.
It's definitely tense, as you can see kind of this wall, these students locked arm in arm with police facing them, trying to make sure that they don't inch any closer to the university. It's hard to say, guys, how long that this is going to be happening. Last night, like you said, as we were out at Jackson Square, the gates of Jackson Square were closed at 7 p.m. and those protesters had tents set up, an encampment set up, about 10 tents, 3 dozen or so protesters, and they would not leave. So NOPD came in, and as you saw last night, 12 people arrested, 5 NOPD cops injured in that happened last night. So definitely, as you said, Katie, things have seemed to escalate over the last 24 hours here in New Orleans.
Lily, I know that you've spoken to some of the students that are out there. We know that some people are students and some people are just protesters that have joined in on this cause. How many police officers are you seeing out there? Because I guess from the view that we have, the vantage point that we have, we don't see as many, but we see more enforcements coming up.
I see probably at least a dozen Tulane police officers on scene, and then you can see at least 4 NOPD mounted patrol back here behind us as well. LUPD had a presence blocking off roads as the students marched from Perrette to St. Charles. So easy to say, guys, probably 2 dozen officers at least out here at this point, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more like last night. We saw additional NOPD officers come out to Jackson Square. Then we saw Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office as well as LSP come out to Jackson Square as things escalated last night.
We heard from Mayor Latoya Cantrell earlier today, just a little while ago, in fact, about how she felt the response was handled last night, handled well by New Orleans police. She praised them for the way that they handled it. Of course, nobody wants to see anyone injured in these protests, but you know, she is saying good things about the police officers, giving them high marks for how they responded last night. Now, these are obviously Loyola and Tulane police. It's slightly different from the NOPD, but NOPD is certainly playing a role out there. It seems like things have calmed down a little bit, Lily. Is that accurate?
Things are calming down as far as right now, just chanting that's happening. I know you mentioned Tulane Loyola, but I do have to say NOPD Mounted Patrol has followed these students, Katie, all the way from Perrette down to St. Charles, so they're keeping an eye on things out here as well.
But Lily, I have to just ask you, you've had an opportunity to listen and speak to some of the students at Tulane and Loyola. We know that similar protests are happening at Columbia University in New York City and major universities across the country. What is it that students are saying to you right now that they're demanding from their respective universities?
Well, as we were at UNO earlier today, they were talking about they want to see universities divest their investment from Israel. They also were explaining to us at UNO earlier today that, you know, they're a smaller university, but they have a large Palestinian community on campus, and so they wanted to support that community, hold a peaceful rally, like I said earlier today at UNO, that started about 2 p.m. at their library lawn. They were explaining to us that it was really just about showing up, showing support, giving speeches, chanting, nothing like what we're seeing out here at this hour at Tulane University.
Okay, so what are general thoughts, Lily, on what the students are saying largely, I mean, you just mentioned that they want to divest Israel and Israeli funding from the universities. These are national tenets that we've seen in these protests that have been going on all over America because of the war in Gaza. A lot of ties in this area to Israel and Palestine in New Orleans, so I know that this is a heated issue. People's hearts are really at the center of this. So anything else that you're hearing from them that people at home may benefit from?
Yeah, it looks like they're banding together right now. I don't know if they're necessarily just lining up or banding it together.
It seems to be that they are, like I said, locking arms and kind of creating almost like a wall or a shield between them and the officers at this point. Tensions do seem to maybe have died down just a bit from what you all saw here at the top of the 6, but obviously that could change quickly at any given second. It looks like we've got some more, yes, I'm seeing at least a dozen more NOPD officers on foot walking up from the Audubon Park area towards Tulane right now.
Now, Lily, talk about the umbrellas that we're seeing there, because is it raining or is that part of the protest?
It is raining. It's been raining since this started around 5 p.m. on Ferret Street. So everybody does seem to be having a little bit of their rain gear on, Katie, but right now those umbrellas seem to be being used to create kind of that barrier, like I said, between students and police.
All right, it seems like it's a little bit of a standoff. For anybody that's just joining us right now, we're giving a live look in front of Tulane and Loyola, where students, what our Lily Cummings says is maybe hundreds of students out there protesting against the war in Gaza. Of course, these are students who are asking their respective universities to divest away from Israel. And of course, we've seen these demonstrations, talked about them happening not just here, but at several university campuses across the country, unfortunately resulting in multiple arrests. And there were many arrests that happened last night, or more than a dozen that happened in Jackson Square.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are hundreds of people out here, demonstrators on both sides of this issue. For the most part, it has been a peaceful protest, but that wasn't the case earlier this afternoon when the demonstrators were trying to set up an encampment. I want to show you some of that scuffle. Officers were trying to prevent the encampment while the demonstrators started to put up some tents. You'll see a tug of war between them over those tents, a lot of confusion and even some arrests. Eventually, the demonstrators joined arms and created this human barrier, a circle around the speakers and around the tents that they were able to set up. Demonstrators tell us they are protesting in support of the Palestinian people, and they want both Tulane and Loyola to disclose any investments that supply arms, fuel, or technology to Israel. They also have other demands for both universities. They want a place to grieve the killings without censorship, and they want the university to release a public statement acknowledging what they call a genocide of Palestinians.
I think there's currently a national movement. I think people are scared. I think those in power are scared, and that's why we're seeing pushback. Right now, we're all galvanized together. We are organized. We are succinct. We know what we want. We know our demands. We are coming together all as part of university, and just like the Vietnam War, we are coming down, and they are scared. And even though we are here peacefully, they know that we are going to get our demands met.
And if you can hear over the loudspeaker, Tulane police are telling these demonstrators that they are trespassing on Tulane property. On this side of the median here, Jewish students and Jewish supporters are here, and they say that they are not backing down to these kinds of demonstrations.
Tulane has a very big Jewish population. We have 40% Jewish population at our school, and we just had our, End Jew Hatred a rally, and they've decided to come on our day. It's actually also a holiday, Passover, and they've decided to come on that day and, have this huge protest and say these anti-Semitic things. It's very upsetting to see.
Yeah, Tulane did Tulane did cancel some classes and evacuate the 3 buildings that you see out there. When things got physical, we're told that classes should resume tomorrow, and Tulane police say they have arrested 6 demonstrators who are refusing to identify themselves. We're told that they face charges of battery against an officer, resisting arrest, and for trespassing. So far, NOPD, they are here on scene tonight, but they have not, they've said that they have not made any arrests as of yet. Right now, it's just the Tulane Police Department who is saying that they have arrested 6 people. We'll be monitoring this situation this evening throughout the night, and we'll bring you any updates. For now, on Tulane's campus, Whitney Miller, WWL, Louisiana.
Whitney, thank you so much. In a statement we got a short time ago from the university, they said, quote, "We fundamentally respect the right to protest. Free speech is foundational to our society and a bedrock tenet of universities. However, breaking the law, hate speech, harassment, intimidation, trespassing, violence, and other criminal acts will not be tolerated."
And this protest comes after a demonstration last night in Jackson Square led to a dozen arrests. We were there as protesters tried to stay in the park after it closed at 7 and got into scuffles with officers clearing the square.
Well over 100 protesters here, so it's not a small demonstration. And you can see this camp that they've actually set up here on the front lawn. I would say it's about a dozen or so tents because these students have been staying the night and they're planning on staying tonight as well. We talked to a few of them and they say they have no plans to go home until they get what they want.
But we are tired, but still so energized, and we are not ready to give up.
For the second night in a row, dozens of pro-Palestine demonstrators are standing their ground on Tulane's front lawn.
Till our demands are met or there's mass arrests, but either way, we will be back here.
Like many of the protesters, Vaughn Crandall is a student at Tulane University and one of the 6 facing suspension.
I understand the frustration. I can't go to class either. I've been suspended, but also the students at Gaza can't go to class either. There are no universities left in Gaza anymore.
She says she wants to see Loyola and Tulane University administration take action.
We had the hope, of course, that when we were setting this up, that our demands would be met.
Asking for protection for Palestinian students and divesting from Israeli companies.
None of this is necessary. At any point, Tulane or Loyola can always withdraw and pull back, and we are more than welcome to evacuate.
Students and residents showed up in support of Israel, too.
I want to show also the other side of the conflict. It's very saddening because I don't think they understand the background, the history.
Claiming they're not getting enough support from their universities.
Free speech does not include freedom to harass, intimidate, interrupt, and assault students, and that's exactly what's happening here.
And around 2 o'clock, this large no trespassing sign was set up on the lawn, advising people to leave immediately, but it does not appear that these protesters will be complying. Reporting live from Uptown, Amelia Strahan, WWL Louisiana.
We saw Tulane put up these large, tall fences across campus where this encampment was. You can see these signs posted saying private property, no trespassing, as well as Tulane Police's presence out here. They say that these fences are going to remain until commencement on May 18th. Tulane says it hopes that it can return to normal operations tomorrow. Around 3 a.m. Wednesday, New Orleans and state police descended on the encampment at Tulane. Law enforcement warned demonstrators to leave. A special operations unit formed a human wall, moving demonstrators along St. Charles Avenue. At one point, you see an officer point what might be a less than lethal weapon at demonstrators. Our cameras were rolling as arrests were made. We heard from a Loyola sophomore after they were released from jail.
I was shoved, I was pushed, and I was pulled.
NOPD Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick was on the scene.
We wanted people to be able to have voice and yet not create a violation of the law This is protected property.
This brings the total number of arrests to 20. Of those, 3 are Tulane students, 5 are Loyola students. Organizers say the others were alumni and community members.
I can say that I don't think I've ever seen that many Loyola and Tulane students united on one thing ever.
Some Jewish students say campus feels safer now that it's over.
I feel safe. I feel like they handled it very well. I'm very relieved that it's over with. I mean, obviously there's a bunch of other colleges where you've seen like things get out of hand, and like there was a time where I was a little worried, you know, could this escalate, could this get any worse?
Tulane closed 3 buildings during the demonstrations, moving those classes online. The university says they will reopen on Thursday. Tulane suspended 7 students, and Loyola says it's discussing disciplinary action.
I am no longer allowed on campus. All of my belongings to complete the semester are on campus. At this time, we have no indication that they will allow us to complete our finals.
Demonstrators say they don't plan to back down.
It is not over with the end of a semester.
And Tulane did release a statement this morning saying that it's looking into reports of employees being involved with those demonstrations as well. Reporting live in Uptown, Lily Cummings, WWL Louisiana.
Okay, so more to come. Thank you, Lily. And just after that encampment cleared, we also heard from the independent police monitor about it. She was there to observe how the NOP...
Leslie, this letter that displays hundreds of signatures criticizes Tulane of its alleged censorship of students' right to free speech. It also rejects the claim that this week's protests were motivated and controlled by outside agitators. Now, students marched from Ferret Street to St. Charles Avenue, across from where that encampment site was held here on the Gibson lawn. They then held a press conference doubling down on their demands to the university to disclose its annual investments as well as divest and cut ties with Israel. We asked students about their connection with non-students participating in this week's demonstrations.
Community members have been working with us from various grassroots organizations. We've severed our relationship with New Orleans in a way that is incredibly toxic to both the university's culture and to the culture of New Orleans by pushing blame onto outside agitators. It's creating a divide in the community.
Classes have wrapped up this week and finals is next week. This fence that you see here will stay up until that May 18th commencement ceremony. And student protesters did say that they plan to return next fall with the same cause on their mind. We reached out to Tulane University officials for comment, and we are waiting for a response.